What a week it's been for the ACC. 2 words, Notre Dame, but now it's game day, and this has been circled on the calendar for quite a while. Maryland and UConn. Randy Edsall leading the Terps against his old team. They're the players arriving for the game. Surprise, surprise, even with all those Maryland Terp injuries, the Terps are 2-0.
It is my distinct pleasure to announce Notre Dame as the 15th member of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Notre Dame, welcome to the neighborhood. The ACC rocked college sports this week, bringing in the Irish. We break down what it means for the future of the conference. Look who's back, Sammy Watkins.
We're 2-0, Sammy. Don't mess it up.
They've been great, and while he was gone, DeAndre Hopkins looked like the best wide receiver in the country. 2 key conference games. Wake goes for a second straight shocker and could end the Noles national title hopes. Plus, the Cavs survive Penn State.
And Penn State comes up short.
They'll need to be even better to stop Georgia Tech. It's already a must-win game for the Yellow Jackets. This is ACC Kickoff Live.
Over to the 10, at the 5. Touchdown.
All right, a great Saturday for ACC football and a great week to be an ACC fan. Welcome to the show. I'm Jeff Fischel. With me, former Georgia Tech and NFL running back Dorsey Levens, Wake Forest quarterback Riley Skinner, and we'll see Kelly Nash, talk to her in just a couple of minutes. But first, the huge news. Notre Dame is coming to the ACC. Here's what we know. Notre Dame is a full member in all sports except football, so Notre Dame keeps its independent status in football, but will play 5 ACC teams each season. If Notre Dame or any school decides it wants out of the conference, it will cost $50 million. So the big question, when does Notre Dame join the conference? As soon as the school works out an exit from the Big East. All right, guys, immediate reaction. Dorsey, what does this mean for ACC football?
I think it's great for ACC football. I think Notre Dame is arguably one of the most recognizable brands in all of the United States. And if you think about Notre Dame, you got Touchdown Jesus, you got the Golden Dome, you got Newt Rockne, Rudy. You know, the list goes on and on. Just historically, what Notre Dame brings to the table as a brand, I think is tremendous for the ACC. It just lifts them up to another level.
Yeah, and you also got to think about recruiting, the implications it has of what these ACC coaches can sell. The ACC sells itself with its football and academics, but when you can go into an 18-year-old's home and tell them that you're going to be playing on national TV from East Coast to West Coast against a Notre Dame team in South Bend, one of the most storied stadiums and programs, it just creates so much of a excitement in an 18-year-old's mind. It makes the recruiting easy. And second, I want to see the rivalries with these new teams like Clemson, Virginia Tech, Florida State, playing a Notre Dame team. That's 2 big-time programs going against each other year in and year out.
And the schools do get the promise. The way the deal works is that each team will play Notre Dame once every 3 years. So, Riley, you're right. No matter where you are, what school in the ACC you go to, or which team you're a coach for, you can say to a guy, you will definitely play Notre Dame at least once.
At least once. And that's all you need. That's all you need. That sells itself. I know, talking to players that at Wake Forest, when we got Notre Dame on the schedule, they were looking at that game 2-3 years out, and we're so fired up about it. Not just the coaches, the players, but the community, everybody. And I think it's going to affect the whole thing.
One of the things that stands out to me, when I was at Notre Dame, for us every week was just business as usual. Whenever we played somewhere on the road, it was like you said, these teams have been looking forward to this game for years ahead of time, so it was big news. So being a part of Notre Dame, you know you're part of something special, something really, really big.
Like the county fair's coming to town.
Right.
Everything shuts down.
Riley apparently gets excited about county fairs. All right, this isn't just football. It's every sport in the ACC. You will not find a sports story that has gotten more people talking or tweeting. Let's bring in K-Nash Sports, Kelly Nash. Kelly, what kind of reaction have you been seeing?
That's right, Jeff. ACC was all over Twitter this week. It was trending. So excited to see that. Now, of course, the big angle, like you said, is football. But hoop season right around the corner. Everyone's excited. They want to know, how are these Irish going to stack up against the Tar Heels, the Blue Devils, and, of course, the Maryland Terrapins. Now, head coach over there, Mark Turgeon, fired up about the challenge. He tweeted, "Terps, let's welcome Mike Bray and his Irish to the ACC. Look forward to competing against them more regularly." And Coach, we're looking forward to watching. Now, Dick Vitale, he tweeted preemptively on Saturday. He heard from an ACC source this was in the works. Now, it happened a lot sooner than he thought. He was excited about the move. He tweeted, "ND to ACC, a great move for ACC, and Notre Dame control football but get away from chaos of Big East. I don't like these wacky moves, but Notre Dame made a solid move." Now, Jimbo Fisher, of course, had something to say. He tweeted, "When ND plays here, it's going to be wonderful. It's a great opponent with a great tradition." Now, remember, guys, Fisher led those Noles to a win in the Champ Sports Bowl over those Irish.
That's right. They did just play last December. This is a great story for the ACC and college football. We will have more on this coming up. But right now, let's talk today. Let's talk football. Let's talk the Saturday menu. Wake at Florida State.
We'll see if number 5 Florida State is for real. The last 6 matchups have been heavily determined on turnover. For Florida State to get a win, they need to keep the ball out of the defensive hand of Wake Forest.
Maryland and UConn.
Big game today from Randy Edsall playing against his former team. But what I really want to see on the football field is if true freshman quarterback Perry Hills can continue his onslaught the last couple of games. Looking forward to seeing what he's going to do.
BC at Northwestern.
And Chase Reddick has been on fire. Surprise offense and quarterback, in my opinion. But this is going to be a must-win game before they get into the heart of the ACC.
NC State tries to get things going. South Alabama.
Can NC State's offensive line get back on track? Last week they had three backs combined for only 82 yards rushing, and Mike Glennon was put on his back 6 times. You got to keep your quarterback upright if you expect to win games.
And Death Valley's next victim, Furman. Sammy Watkins is back. Dabo Swinney says he wants to see him take a lot of snaps today.
He's a part of our leadership group, and when I met with those guys yesterday, that's what I told him. I was like, "All right, we're 2-0, Sammy. Don't mess it up," you know. He just kind of grinned, you know. So I would think you'll see him pretty early and show up pretty soon. I don't think it'll take him long to get back going, and he needs to play a good bit. You know, he needs to play and really not that he's practiced, he's done everything, but he needs to just get that good game under his belt. You know, like these guys have gotten.
We know the numbers last year. They were phenomenal. As a true freshman, 82 catches, over 1,200 yards receiving, 12 touchdowns. Riley, what does it mean for Clemson to have him back?
It's huge, and I agree with Coach Swinney. He needs to play a lot in this game, even though it may be a blowout, because he needs to get that endurance back that you don't get in practice. But I think it's going to be a big test to see how unselfish this Clemson football team is, because they have so many playmakers. You know everybody wants the ball, and Sammy Watkins is so special. You got to get it. But Taj Boyd cannot try to force the ball to Sammy Watkins. I think he just needs to let it play out and throw to his open receivers, because they haven't missed a beat.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm curious to see how he works into the mix, because while he was gone, Nuke Hopkins had a great 2 games, probably the best receiver in the country those first 2 games. Andre Ellington is finally healthy. He had a great game the first game. Didn't play as much last week, but I want to see how he gets acclimated, see how they put him in the mix. Like you said, there's only one football, and there are a lot of talented guys around there, so you can't give them all the ball every play. So I want to see how Dabo Swinney works them into the mix so he fits in with the rest of the guys.
My gut reaction, they're not going to miss a beat. They're just going to be that much more explosive. But he needs to get ready to go, because next week, Florida State.
That's right.
Huge
You know,
game.
Clemson, everyone today saying we're not looking past Furman, but we know the real deal. Next Saturday, it is Florida State and Clemson, a huge battle. That is going to be so good. The question is Florida State ready for the big battle? The first 2 weeks, Savannah State, Murray State, not a big test. Riley, talk about the Florida State offense and how it now needs to be ready for a real test today against that Wake
They're going to get
team.
a real test, and I think the real test is going to be on the outside with the cornerbacks. And Rodney Smith, he's a very exciting receiver at 6'6", can go up and get the ball at his highest point, but he needs to create separation today. I think E.J. Maynard's going to have some time to throw, because Nikita Whitlock, Wake's #1 pass rusher, is out this game. That's going to hurt them. But I think outside is going to where they're going to have their biggest test compared to the first 2 weeks against these cupcakes.
The Wake offense did a great job of neutralizing North Carolina's attacking defense last week, but now, Dorsey, this is a much tougher test. The Florida State defense, one of the best in the country.
It really is one of the best defenses in the country. Although they played against 2 FCS teams, we're not really sure how good they are. But this is the first week they're going to get a real test against a good Wake Forest offense. They got quarterback Tanner Price as well as Michael Campanero, wide receiver, who's going to give those guys a quality test. And we also want to see which one of those Florida State young defensive ends is going to step in for injured Brandon Jenkins and make some noise. We've seen them play against lesser talent. Now you're playing against the, as we like to say, big boy football starts. Let's see what you got.
And they've got plenty of talent on that defensive line. They're deep. And I think that Wake Forest is going to have to move the pocket like they did last year, and don't let Tanner Price sit back there and let those boys on the ends tee off. Because if they do that, it can be a long day for the offensive line.
I'll tell you what, if there is one team, though, in the ACC that drives Florida State nuts, it is Wake Forest. Going back to your years, the Demon Deacons have won 4 of the last 6 against the Noles. We'll get their predictions on this game coming up a little bit later. Ahead on ACC Kickoff Live, Georgia Tech's triple option, all kinds of trouble for defenses, but Virginia had the answer last year. EA Sports helps us break down what the Yellow Jackets do so well and what the Cavs may do to stop them today. The Fighting Irish are coming, but when? We do know Pitt and the Qs will be here next year. Just like the times, the ACC is a-changin'. Can the Terps keep winning with a true freshman quarterback? Randy Edsall's team is going for a 3-0 start, and emotions will be running high today against UConn. For more on the third weekend of Atlantic Coast Conference football, tune in to the ACC Blitz powered by Ram. Host Dave Baker and Coach Tommy Bowden will break down all the weekend's key games, including Florida State's showdown with Wake Forest, and break down the impact of Notre Dame's entry into the ACC. Tune in at noon to the ACC Blitz powered by Ram. Check local listings for the station in your area. All right, let's do the Coastal Division Saturday menu brought to you by Ruby Tuesday. Miami with Bethune-Cookman.
A game they should easily win, but I want to see them more importantly bounce back from a disappointing defeat last week in Kansas State. A lot of young players, 14 players last week appeared in their first game, 12 freshmen.
Hokies at Pitt.
Future ACC matchup. I want to see Virginia Tech start off hot and early with Logan Thomas and company. They need some long, methodical drives and getting a rhythm.
UNC at Louisville.
They're playing against a ranked team for the first time. Interesting matchup. Charlie Strong and Larry Fedora coached together at University of Florida, so they're very familiar with each other. It's going to be a nice chess match.
And Duke at home.
Duke needs to bounce back after that big loss at Stanford. It's going to be great to have Blair Holiday around the game, a huge inspiration. But again, I go back to their rushing defense. They got to get more stout up front.
And what a matchup in Atlanta. The Hoos held off Penn State last week. Georgia Tech needs a win, or else Paul Johnson's team will be 0-2 in the ACC, and it's still just middle of September. Georgia Tech's option attack drives defensive nuts. Last week against Presbyterian, the offense gained over 700 yards, but Virginia had the answer last year, 24-21. All right, Riley, what did Mike London's D do last year to slow down Georgia Tech?
Well, they did what you have to do against this offense, and that's put pressure on Tevin Washington, and they did that by blitzing their linebackers a lot up the middle, and they played it very well. If you see here, they utilized the A-gap blitz, so they had the linebacker time his rush perfectly and disrupt the handoff in the background. And you see the safety that comes up to the line of scrimmage. Tevin Washington, only option he has is to pull the ball and try to pitch it. The safety is up on the line of scrimmage, taking away the pitch back, and he's got nowhere to go. And they really utilize that blitz very effectively to cause a lot of disruption. And again, you see the safety creeping up. That's huge. You have to have a safety that can tackle. And the linebacker comes right in between the A-gap, between the center and the guard, disrupts the exchange between Tevin Washington and his fullback. Tevin Washington can't hand it off. He's going to have to pull it and try to make something happen. He does. He's got nowhere to go. Again, 1 yard loss. And that was just one of the many blitzes that they used against Georgia Tech. And I think if they're going to be successful again this week, they're going to have to get him rattled. Because when they get in a methodical rhythm and on their offense, it's tough to stop.
Yeah.
Dorsey, I was just going to say, it is tough to stop, but if you stop it, all of a sudden Georgia Tech is looking at 0-2. This is really a must-win game, isn't it?
It really is a must-win game, especially for the ACC in the Coastal Division. They're already one game behind of Virginia Tech. You don't want to fall 2 games behind losing to Virginia. The goal for most teams when you start the season is to win your conference. And if they go 0-2 in the Coastal Conference, that goal is pretty much out the window. And if they don't win, it's going to be the rest of the season is going to be challenging because you really don't have a lot to play for except for a bowl game. But I know the first goal is always to win the championship in the conference.
Let me say one more thing. The reason I think they won last year, they had a bye week before Georgia Tech.
They did.
That's huge. That history's shown Georgia Tech doesn't do so well. So this week they don't have a bye week. They came off that big win against Penn State. They're going to have to get ready on defense to be able to stop them.
One note on that, Mike London and defensive coordinator Jim Reed, they did take a couple of days during August fall camp to practice against the Georgia Tech triple option. We'll see if even a month ahead of the game, if that might have helped a little bit. All right, a year from now, Virginia Tech versus Pitt. It would be a conference game. We're not there yet. The two teams play today in the Steel City. Let's be blunt. Virginia Tech should win. Pitt is 0-2 and has not looked good. Dorsey, we're still waiting to see what the Virginia Tech offense, though, can do.
Yeah, especially in their running game. We're looking at 2 true freshmen in Michael Holmes and J.C. Coleman to fill in for David Wilson, who was a great running back last year, probably Logan Thomas's best friend, 1,600 yards rushing. But somebody's got to fill in for David Wilson, take some of the pressure off Logan Thomas. Logan hasn't played as well as he's played last year, but once again, David Wilson is not there to protect him. So one of these young guys has to step up and take some of the pressure off of Thomas.
Speaking of best friends, they've got a pretty good defense on the other side of the ball, which is another good friend of Logan Thomas. But one thing to remember, the last 3 times Pitt and Virginia Tech have played, Pitt's got the better of them. This is an old Big East rivalry, but I think that was some different teams back then. I don't think it's the same Virginia Tech and Pitt team as it was a couple years ago.
When Pitt does come to the ACC a year from now, it will be in rebuild mode, but we do know that Pitt does have a great history in football. Okay, like I said, a year from now, this would be a conference game. It just shows what incredible 12 months it's been for the ACC. 1 year ago this week, the conference made clear it had big plans, announcing Pittsburgh and Syracuse were coming. Then in February, the conference sorted out its new 14-team alignment. Pitt would be in the Coastal Division. The Qs will be in the Atlantic. And 2 months ago tomorrow, the ACC announced Syracuse would officially join on July 1st, 2013. 2 days later, the same for Pitt, both paying $7.5 million to leave the Big East early. And Wednesday, the ACC accepts Notre Dame as member number 15. Wow, what a year for Commissioner John Swofford, extending the power and influence of the ACC North and then West into the Midwest. Once upon a time, Virginia and Maryland were like the northern outposts. Now you have BC, Pitt, Syracuse, and Notre Dame. ACC definitely changing things up over what we've known for years and decades. That southern drawl not quite as pronounced, but that's why we have Riley around, that's for sure. All right, Dorsey, what kind of impact do these 3 schools now have on the ACC?
Oh, I think it's huge. You know, I mean, you got 3 now quality programs coming into the ACC. Too bad for the Big East. You know, I'm a Syracuse guy. I grew up in the Big East, and the ACC raided the Big East's closet of all the best players they have. But for me, like I said, I was born a half a mile from Syracuse's campus. I went to Notre Dame. I went to Georgia Tech. I went to Pitt's football camp when I was in high school. All this is falling into place for me. This is perfect. I love it.
It's like you had a part in bringing all these guys in. I think when you look at the media coverage that you're going to get from this, at first we thought, now you get New York, now you get Pittsburgh. We really have the entire East Coast. And then they go in and throw Notre Dame, and now you've got from the East Coast all the way to the West Coast. And that's just huge to build the brand of the ACC, get national coverage, talking about football, basketball, baseball, really everything. And so it's hard to say what it's going to do right now. It's going to be curious to see where we are in 4 or 5 years and how big the ACC is nationally.
Now, the one thing we do know is Notre Dame's not playing a full conference schedule in football, 5 games instead of 9. What do you think of that? 5 games enough for you? You're an ACC guy.
I want to be greedy because I want Notre Dame to come in full-time. And I wish they do, and I wish maybe down the road I have high hopes. But for now, 5 games is huge. I do wish, though, we could have got them for the entire football season. But, hey, we'll take what we can get for right now and see where it is down the road.
Notre Dame Commissioner Swafford aren't sure yet when Notre Dame will join the ACC, but it will sure make things more interesting. 3 conference teams licking their wounds after disappointing losses last week. The Tar Heels face one of the most exciting quarterbacks in the country. A former Cane ripped into the team. You have to hear this. And the Blue Devils will get an incredible emotional lift today at home.
Okay.
Randy Edsall said this week if he had to do it all over again, he would talk to his UConn players and tell them he was leaving to take the job at Maryland. Edsall goes up against some of his old players today at Byrd Stadium. The Terps trying to go to 3-0. Confidence a big factor in football. UNC sounded incredibly confident after beating Elon in week 1 62-0. Now the Tar Heels need to rediscover that confidence after last week's loss to Wake Forest. The Tar Heels on the road at Louisville. We found out Gio Bernard will not play. We thought he was healthy. He is not. Dorsey, what's it mean to have Gio Bernard out of the lineup?
It means that A.J. Blue and Romar Morris are going to have to step up. They combined last week for almost over 200 yards rushing. Those 2 young guys are going to have to step up. And somebody's going to have to step up in special teams area as well, fill a void for Gio as a punt returner.
Yeah, there's a big gap left when he's out of there. But let me say this. That UNC defense needs to strap on their helmets, buckle up, and keep their head on a swivel when they're facing quarterback Teddy Bridgewater of Louisville. He's been outstanding so far. Almost 600 yards, 2 touchdowns. No interceptions, 11 incompletions against Kentucky and Missouri State. He's playing about as good as any other quarterback in the country. So if UNC wants to win, they got to be on their game in defense and get after the passer.
That one is at 3:30. Like UNC fans, Miami's fans hope to see their team recover from a disappointing last week. They got beaten pretty hard by Kansas State 52-13. Former Miami player Dan Sileo went on an epic rant this week criticizing the Canes on radio station WQAM.
This Canes disaster, I have never seen our defensive tackles this bad, ever. Horrific. Poor. And there needs to be some accountability. There needs to be some leadership. You cannot go to Manhattan, Kansas, and get dragged up and down the field by a team that's ranked 21. I'm telling you, if I see another defensive tackle on the University of Miami sitting around looking for girls in the stands, you are going to be held accountable. It's embarrassing. You play at the University of Miami.
So again, that was Dan Sileo, former Miami Hurricane. Dorsey, he may not have put it politely, but we do know the defense has struggled first couple of weeks.
First of all, I didn't know the Macho Man Randy Savage did radio for the University of Miami. But this is a different Miami team. It's not the same team that Dan played for back in the day. They're rebuilding, like we talked about earlier. They have 14 guys play for the first time last week, 12 freshmen. All in all, they have 42 newcomers on this team. Notre Dame, somebody needs to make sure he gets his meds before he goes on the air next time.
My man was hopped up on some Red Bull or something.
Whoa.
But look, you mentioned the young guys, and I agree. I mean, it's tough when you play younger players, but what they're missing is not coming with age. It's the lack of urgency and fire and to get after it in this. I mean, they're not flying around the football field like you think a Miami defense should. They're 113th in the country in defense. Something's got to change. I'm with my man, but maybe not that passionate about it.
They have given up over 1,000 yards in the first two games. Duke today, meanwhile, taking on North Carolina Central. The Blue Devils coming off that disappointing 50-13 loss at Stanford. Riley, we're following the Blue Devils and their improvement. Where are they right now? What were they missing last week against Stanford?
They're missing a rushing defense again, but they were missing it last year and the year before. So they need to make improvements up front in the trenches. But also they had 4 turnovers last week. When you're a Duke team, the turnover battle, that's something you got to win if you're going to be competitive against these ACC teams, and that's just not Duke football. When you start turning it over and sometimes have superior athletes in the team you're playing, it makes it a really uphill battle to get a W on Saturdays.
By the way, these two schools announced this week they'll extend their series. They'll play again next year and in 2015, 16, 17, all in Durham. At Duke's Wallace Wade Stadium today, it may be the most emotionally charged place in all of college football. Kelly Nash, I can't believe this. It's so great. Blair Holiday will actually be at the game.
Well, that's the plan, Jeff. It could really be an emotional day if he does show up. Now, the severely injured wide receiver plans to make his first Duke visit today for the first time since his nearly fatal jet ski accident. Now, Holiday told reporters this past week it's been his dream to return to campus, see his teammates. No other teammate is more excited than Jamison Crowder. Now, he was on the other jet ski that collided into Holiday July 4th weekend. Nothing set in stone. Coach Cutcliffe said it all depends on how Holiday is feeling this morning. But if anything, I believe we all know the outcome to this one.
Yeah, the recovery has been incredible so far. David Cutcliffe saying, look, the plan is to have him come. The plan is to have him be down on the field at one point. Obviously, if he can't make it physically, it won't happen. But this is a huge lift following how he's recovered all season.
It's just it's an uplifting story, and it makes you really happy for the kids, not only Blair Holiday, but the guys on the team. Because I know he had best friends on that team who he's close with. And when you're missing a guy like that in your locker room day in and day out, it's just kind of a piece of your heart, a piece of the team is missing, and to have him walk on that field today, if it happens, it's pretty inspirational and great to see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, still ahead. The Golden Dome has a new conference home. Which ACC team will become Notre Dame's big rival? You weigh in. Jim Grobe and the Demon Deacons seem to know what it takes to take down the Noles. They've won 4 of 6 against Florida State. Which team has the best recipe for success in today's conference battle? That's next.
It is my distinct pleasure to announce Notre Dame as the 15th member of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
I think unquestionably, in a host of sports, this is the best athletic conference in the country, and we will only make it better in that regard.
I think it's going to be the deepest, will become the deepest conference in America with very good basketball.
It'll be fun watching Notre Dame, go up against Duke, North Carolina, and Wake Forest and schools like that in the ACC.
It will only make us stronger, and I think we'll make them stronger as well.
We'll be able to be in 10 of the 11 largest cities in America with our football program.
And Notre Dame is fully committed to enhancing the ACC and its member institutions.
We didn't feel compelled to do something, but it was the right time to evaluate options, and this opportunity with the ACC just seemed perfect.
Now's the time, and this is a partnership that is a win-win and good for both parties, and the time had come to cross that threshold.
The big story in all of college football, Notre Dame coming to the ACC. We don't know when exactly yet, 2015 or earlier. I'm Jeff Fischel. Welcome back to ACC Kickoff Live with Riley Skinner and Dorsey Levens. The Irish will be a full member in every ACC sport except football. They'll keep their independence in football, but will play 5 ACC football games each year. Let's look at the other big parts of that negotiation that finally came together for the two sides, Notre Dame and the ACC. Notre Dame will play each ACC school once every 3 years. They won't count as conference games. In fact, an ACC team could take on Notre Dame in the Orange Bowl, potentially. And to guarantee the ACC some long-term stability, there's now a $50 million fee for any school that tries to leave. All right. That is the battle between Notre Dame now and all kinds of great schools. We're going to see them take on Miami. We're going to see them take on Florida State. We asked you on Facebook, what is going to be the best rivalry for Notre Dame in the ACC? First, guys, I want to get your take. Dorsey, what do you think?
Well, I think, like we talked about earlier, when they're on somebody's schedule, that's a big game for that team. I'm going to follow suit and say Georgia Tech and Notre Dame, both of my former schools. We're going to dub this the Dorsey Bowl, just for future reference. But those are the two games that the two teams that I'm going to look forward to see down the road in this matchup.
The Dorsey Bowl's got a nice ring to it.
I like that.
that. I'm going to go with the Noles. I mean, it's going to be a lot of gold helmets on that football field, but you're talking about two of the most storied programs. Florida State, that's going to be so much fun to see them traveling up to South Bend, and Notre Dame coming in and playing at Doak Campbell Stadium. That's just years and years and years of history with that. So I'm going to go Florida State.
All right, Kelly Nash, let's bring you in. K Nash Sports, what are the fans saying? Who do they want to see take on Notre Dame?
That's right. We asked them this week on Facebook.com/the ACC. The results may surprise you. Let's take a look. Now other garnering 55%, FSU 29%, BC 10, Miami 6. Do they forget the late 80s games? Are you kidding me? Guys, who do you think is this dreaded other?
I think it's everybody's alma mater.
Yeah, that's right.
I like that answer, actually, because everybody wants to see their team as the biggest rival. So.
And again, it will happen once every 3 years. Every ACC school will get a shot at Notre Dame. You know what's really turning into an ACC great rivalry right now? Wake Forest and Florida State. Last year, Tanner Price threw for 3 touchdowns. Josh Harris averaged more than 10 yards a carry. The Demon Deacons taking advantage of 5 seminal turnovers. Wake didn't cough it up once. Final 35-30 Wake Forest. The Demon Deacons have won 4 of the past 6 meetings. There you go, going back to Riley's freshman year, a shutout. 39. Oh, he has a big grin right now.
I like seeing these statistics. Keep showing them.
Riley, in fact, are you the only quarterback to have ever beaten Florida State 3 times in his career?
No. I think there's others. Almost 4 times, but that was E.J. Manuel's coming out party my senior year, and it was ugly.
All right.
I wish I could say so.
But Florida State looking to get things turned around today. Time now for our Ruby Tuesday recipe for success. All right, Riley, Wake Forest beats Florida State if?
I got 2 things. Number 1, they eliminate the big play on Florida State's offense. Like you said, the turnovers have been a huge key. Wake Forest needs to keep everything in front of them. Play deep in the secondary. Don't let them get over the top and open up that big play, because once Doak Campbell Stadium gets rocking, it is tough to come back. And secondly, move the pocket for Tanner on offense. That's a good defensive line. It's a deep defensive line, and it's a young offensive line for Wake Forest. So they've got to move the pocket for Tanner, and they did it last week, and he was really good.
All right, Dorsey, flip the script. Florida State beats Wake if?
Florida State beats Wake if their defense is what we think they are. You know, a fly-around, dominating, physical defense. We've seen it the first two games, but against lesser opponents and FCS opponents. Let's see if they can do it against a quality opponent like your old squad.
I hope they can't. But it's a good Florida State defense.
And we'll get his prediction later, that's for sure. The other ACC conference game today, Virginia at Georgia Tech. These two teams are ranked 4th and 5th in the latest ACC Power Poll. Florida State, Clemson, and Virginia Tech 1, 2, 3. Then it's the Yellow Jackets and the Cavs. Dorsey, Riley, K-Nash Sports, and I all have votes in the ACC Power Poll. You can find it every week at theacc.com/Power Poll. All right, Riley. Dorsey, we'll start with you. Let's break it down. We talked about what Virginia did last year. What makes the Yellow Jackets so tough?
It's the triple option.
Yep.
You know, it's hard to stop them. You have to be very disciplined. Like we talked about last week, UVA beat them because those guys had extra time to practice. But here we look at the triple option. You look at the right guard get a block. The quarterback is looking at this right guard. And if he feels that right guard can handle that defensive tackle, he's going to give the ball to what Georgia Tech calls the A-back and go right up the middle. It's all about the quarterback watching the defensive player. So now he fakes to the B-back up the middle. He looks outside, and the cornerback takes the B-back, which is the running back. The quarterback keeps it, cuts it upfield. Here you see the DB commits to the quarterback. So his job is to decide what to do. He pitches it to the outside, and he goes outside down the sideline for a great game. This is what Georgia Tech does on the regular, and if you're not disciplined, all those guys on defense not doing what they're supposed to do assignment-wise, somebody's going to be running wide open. And we've seen it time and time again with Georgia Tech where one person on defense is out of position, and there's somebody running downfield wide open for 70 yards, and there's nobody in the frame with them.
You know what they didn't show on there is cut blocks. They showed the offensive line and standing them up. Georgia Tech is lethal at their cut blocks, and they're legal blocks. And when I talked to our defense when we played Georgia Tech in Navy, they dreaded playing Georgia Tech because they're getting cut all game right at their knees, and there's a lot of ice on that plane going home from Atlanta.
By the way, I want to thank EA Sports, our friends over there, for that great video breaking down what Tevin Washington and the Georgia Tech offense do to other teams every game. All right, Randy Edsall. Oh, there's the Georgia Tech offense, by the way. I want to show you what this team has done ever since Paul Johnson came to town. Wow. Top 5 in the country every year. The last 3 years, they've been well over 300 yards a game. The system definitely works. Paul Johnson's won the Coastal Division twice, finished second twice in his 5 years in Atlanta. All right, there you go. Randy Edsall is the winningest football coach in UConn Husky history, but today he's trying to beat the Huskies. Awkward. We'll see how both sides react to the reunion. I just started moving scripts around. That's fine.
It is my distinct pleasure to announce Notre Dame as the 15th member of the Atlantic Coast Conference.
In his 12 years at UConn, Randy Edsall led the Huskies to 74 wins, 5 bowl games, and 2 conference titles. 2 years ago, he left for Maryland. In less than an hour, Edsall leads the Terps against the Huskies on the ACC network. Steve Martin and Dave Archer have the call.
Well, thanks, Jeff. That's what everybody fights for. Maryland got a national championship trophy back in 1953, and in the 60th year of the ACC, they'd like to get one again. Take a number and join the crowd. Steve Martin here along with Dave Archer. And, of course, for Randy Edsall, who's the Maryland coach, this is going to be a very, very traumatic day. There are going to be 50 guys in that football field, half of them in a Connecticut uniform, half of them in Maryland uniform that he recruited.
Well, and he tries to downplay that significantly. We talked to him yesterday, and he says, hey, this is not about me. I'm not going to put any pads on or play. This is about UConn and Maryland playing. Now, yeah, I'm going to know both guys or guys on both sides of the field, but, hey, I'm going to downplay that. Let's just go play football.
Tough year for the Terps last year, but a great recruiting year. So good, Randy Edsall can play 12 true freshmen in the lineup, but none more important than his quarterback, Perry Hill.
Perry Hill's tough kid. This is a kid that was a state champion in wrestling just a year ago. In fact, his offensive coordinator said, hey, this kid was just getting off the yellow bus last year to go to class. Now he's directing a big-time offense here at Maryland. He had a great week last week after a tough week in week 1. They're going to need him to play big today.
Oh, how he drives the bus this afternoon is going to be vitally important because he's going up against a defense that is coached by the former defensive coordinator here at Maryland, Don Brown. They attack, and they have 8 starters from last year.
Attack is a key word because they're going to come all day long. Ternardo Williams, who comes off the edge, big-time pass rusher, 22 and a half total sacks in his career. He's a guy that'll create havoc, but they create havoc all the way across the front. Have to find everybody and get them blocked.
Dwayne Gratz has taken 2 to the house in his 6 career interceptions for Connecticut. Big question of the day, what uniform will they wear? We'll settle that when we get back to you at 12:30. Back to you, Jeff.
Gentlemen, thank you. All right, let's talk about Randy Edsall. Dorsey, you changed teams over the course of your NFL career. What's it like going against a former player, former teammates, former coach?
It's pretty emotional. You know, when I was with the Philadelphia Eagles, we played the Green Bay Packers. We played in Philadelphia, but there was a lot of emotion because there's a lot of memories associated with being in Green Bay, the success we had, the relationships I built with the trainers, the coaching staff, as well as, you know, some of the players that were still there. You know, for Randy, I know Randy pretty well. When I was in high school in Syracuse, he was a defensive back coach at Syracuse University, and he was assigned to recruiting me. So I know him really well, and I know what he's going through because he really cares about the guys that he coaches and the guys that he recruits. You know, even when I left, he still kept in touch with me to wish me good luck throughout my career. So he's really a good guy, and I know he's got to be having some butterflies inside going against a lot of his former players and coaches.
By the way, that's a live look right now at the game coming up at 12:30, UConn and Maryland. Riley, I've got to admit, I'm surprised to be saying this. The Terps could be 3-0 if they win today. Are you surprised too?
Absolutely. I'm surprised at the 3-0 possibly, and I'm also surprised at Perry Hill's what he did from game 1 to game 2. And that's what you want to see out of a young quarterback who struggled to have a short memory and bounce back. He had no interceptions in game 2, and he looks to be throwing the ball a lot more confidently, and he's making his reads. So the better that he gets in that offense, the slower the game's going to be, and he just got to continue to improve.
The team that played UConn last week, North Carolina State, the Wolfpack barely beat the Huskies 10-7. Dorsey, what does NC State have to do to get better on offense?
Like we talked about earlier, the offensive line has to play better. The running game was very subpar last week, only 82 yards rushing. Mike Glennon was sacked 6 times. You got to keep him on his feet in order to be successful. That's the bottom line.
All right, Mike Glennon has struggled. You know, one quarterback who's actually been pretty impressive in the ACC, Chase Reddick. Today, the Eagles visit Northwestern. You've been impressed as well, right?
I have. I give the credit to Doug Martin, the new offensive coordinator. Boston College was last the last 2 years in offense, and right now, Chase Reddick has thrown for 660 yards and 5 touchdowns, and they look to be playing on an entirely different level than they have the last couple years. The defense just needs to keep holding on enough to let BC get a couple points more than the other team because they've been averaging over 30 points a game, which is huge.
This would be a big win on the road against a Big Ten school. Reason number 1, Clemson is fired up today. Number 2, Sammy Watkins, Dabo Swinney is ready to let him loose. Clemson wide receiver Sammy Watkins, just the third true freshman ever to be named All-American. The others Herschel Walker and Adrian Peterson. Today, he's back for the Tigers. Clemson at home against Furman. Jen Hildreth, I'd like to hear a little more about number 2.
For today's Clemson game against Furman. Yeah, that would be Sammy Watkins, of course, as the preseason ACC Player of the Year gets set to make his 2012 debut for the Tigers. And everybody wants to know, how much is he going to play? How early is he going to get the ball? And after talking to the coaches, I can tell you a lot and pretty early. Now, offensive coordinator Chad Morris told us he scripts out his first 9 plays, and I would not be surprised to see number 2 featured quite prominently among those plays. So keep an eye out for that. Make sure you get here on time, as Sammy Watkins will dress for the Tigers. Now let's go back to you.
All right, Jen, thanks. Another weapon for Taj Boyd. Riley, put yourself in Taj Boyd's shoes. He's been great so far, but now he has Sammy as well. What are opportunities? What perhaps does he have to worry about with Watkins back?
There's more opportunities, but I don't want to see Taj Boyd try to force too much. He's got enough playmakers around him. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. They look to be doing just fine on offense, and just adding Sammy Watkins is going to be icing on the cake. They need to get him the ball early, maybe with some quick bubble screens, but I would not try to design plays just around Sammy, because you've got DeAndre Hopkins and Andre Ellington, 2 of the respective best in their position. So it's great to have them back, but I just say be cautious with trying to get them back too quick. He needs to play a lot to get in game condition, but just keep it simple.
Let's not forget, Dorsey, Sammy Watkins can also change the game on special teams.
He really can. He's a very explosive player like we've been talking about, but anytime you have a guy like that, and a game is closer, you're struggling offensively or defensively, he can change the tone of a game with a big return for a touchdown, or even as it relates to field position. You have a guy who sometimes guys have to kick away from. If they kick out of bounds on kickoffs, that gives you great field position. Or if you kick away from him when you're punting, it'll also give you field position. So he's also a game changer and a difference maker on the special teams end as well.
Watkins was a top recruit out of Florida. With Notre Dame coming to the ACC, the Fighting Irish will fight for even more of the top recruits in the Southeast. Riley, does this help schools with recruiting, being able to say, you are definitely going to play Notre Dame?
Absolutely. When an 18-year-old, you go to their home and you sit down with their mom or dad and you tell them, look, in a year you'll be able to play against Notre Dame in South Bend, and you have people watching you from California to New York to Florida. That sells. That's an easy sell. And I think ACC coaches have got to take advantage of that and use this Notre Dame addition to their advantage, because it's going to have a lot of impact on the recruiting.
By the way, right now on Notre Dame's roster, there are 11 players from Florida, 6 from North Carolina, 3 from Georgia, 2 from South Carolina, so they're already making inroads in the Southeast. Dorsey, you grew up in Syracuse, got recruited to Notre Dame before transferring to Georgia Tech. So what's the sales pitch for kids who didn't grow up near South Bend to come to South Bend?
Well, like we talked about earlier, the Notre Dame brand. I think the sales pitch is you can get whatever you ask for when you go to Notre Dame. As a highly recruited guy, Lou Holtz came into my living room. He said, listen, I know you have aspirations of winning a Heisman Trophy. We just had Tim Brown win a Heisman Trophy a couple of years before you got here. Quarterback Tony Rice was a Heisman finalist. Rocket Ismail was going to be a Heisman candidate going into my freshman year. You want to win a national championship? Well, they won a national championship the year before I got there. You want to be on national TV? Well, we know what that's like. It's every single weekend. As far as academics is concerned, he always said to me, Lou Holtz, only 1% of college guys actually make it to the NFL. So chances are you're not going to make it. That's just the harsh reality of it. We have one of the best academic institutions in the country with a nationwide alumni base that you can find jobs, some of the best jobs in the country. So the sales pitch was right there. It was a no-brainer for me to go to Notre Dame. Everything that I was looking for was right in South Bend.
And now that sales pitch is coming to the ACC. Other 14 schools are going to have to battle that every year. Wake and Florida State are just minutes away. Who will win? Georgia Tech and Virginia, who has the edge? Riley and Dorsey give us their Saturday selections next. You're looking live, the ACC Network Game of the Week, UConn and Maryland. There's quarterback Perry Hills, the true freshman. He has been solid. Clearly a learning curve, but I don't think Randy Edsall could have asked for more. The Terps defense, led by Joe Villano up front, has been fantastic. The Terps trying to go to 3-0 today. Let's take a look back at the best of week 2.
Spiffy could go. Turn on the Jets at the 25 to the 15. See you later. Touchdown, Boston College.
The catch is made. Jake McGee in a jump ball. He got it. Would have been interference anyhow, but McGee made the big catch. 42 yards. Batted around and intercepted by Riley Haynes. Wake gets the turnover. They may have the win.
Wow, what a catch. Tony Zinnin skied for it.
Number 11 goes 11 yards. Isn't that just the way you draw it up? Sometimes, Paul, you just gotta be lucky.
He got it. 61 yards, Spencer Benton. Amazing. Touchdown. What a catch by Kelvin Benjamin. Great play. Oh, what a perfect ball. Touchdown.
That's a fantastic throw by Logan Thomas.
Glennon gets rid of it. Has his man open. Nice catch. Underwood scores. To the end zone, and that's a touchdown, Carolina, and Eric Abrams is back on the field.
Touchdown. Guess who? DeAndre Hopkins for the 3rd time this afternoon.
Here's the full Saturday schedule for the ACC. 4 games start next hour. Miami needs to fix that defense. Virginia Tech needs to fire up that offense. Clemson, no problems with the offense so far. The Tigers have Sammy Watkins back. 3 games I'm really looking forward to at 3:30. Virginia at Georgia Tech. BC at Northwestern. North Carolina at Louisville. The Wolfpack and Blue Devils both have home games tonight. Time now for our Saturday selections to find out who Dorsey and Riley are picking first. Let's see how you guys have done so far in conference. Well, neither of you predicted Wake's upset of North Carolina. So, Dorsey, you are 1-2. Riley's 2-1. The fans are 2-1. Riley, we still need to get you a haircut in that picture, bud.
I think I'm about 50 pounds lighter than I was then.
All right, so now we've got to move on to today. Dorsey, you first. Wake Forest at Florida State.
I'm going to go with Florida State. Defense wins championships, and we've been hearing about how great their defense is. They're playing against a quality opponent this weekend. I think they can get it done.
All right, Riley.
It breaks my heart to go against my Deeks 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah.
So prove me wrong like you did last week, but I'm going with Florida State.
Riley would be happy to be wrong for a second straight
Very
week,
happy.
seeing Florida State take on Wake Forest. All right, the other game, Virginia at Georgia Tech. Dorsey, a tough one for your Yellow Jackets. Who wins?
The Yellow Jackets win. Please, guys, don't let me down. Please, I really appreciate that. But this year, Virginia doesn't have 2 weeks to prepare for that option. So I think Georgia Tech has the upper hand.
You know what? And I will say, last year Virginia was able to rely on their running game themselves. They picked up like over 270 yards rushing. This year the rushing game has struggled. Riley, who do you like, Georgia Tech and Virginia?
I like Virginia, but one thing I want Virginia to do is keep Mike Rocco in the game the entire 4 quarters. Don't keep rotating him out with Philip Sims because that just breaks the momentum. And they just got to create 1 or 2 turnovers, get a little bit of a lead on Georgia Tech, and you know how hard it is for Georgia Tech to come from behind with that lethal 2-minute offense. Lethal.
Michael Rocco, by the way, was fantastic last week in the second half, and I'm sure that was part of Mike London's thinking was he didn't get started fast. Maybe I bring in Philip Sims, but truly he was great.
He was, and that's what they need to do. Create that consistency, keep him in there, and keep that momentum rolling. So I agree with you, and I want him to keep them in there because he's the leader of that football team.
All right, now we know their picks. Time for K-Nash Sports. Kelly, who do the fans think will win these games?
Yeah, guys, another Saturday selections, and guess what? We might have an inaugural fist bump today, guys. Let's start with Florida State and Wake. Fans agree with both of you. 75% pick the Noles. Can't argue there. They are going to the Doak. But let's go to Virginia at Georgia Tech. Guess what, Dorsey? You're finally on the same page as the fans. This fist pump's for you, buddy. 69% pick the Yellow Jackets. Think they can stop Perry Jones.
I think we need to not only keep track of the records for each of you guys, but keep track of how many fist bumps you get from Kelly. Riley got one in week 1. And he felt pretty good about it.
I felt really good about it.
Dorsey now has evened the tally, so we will be keeping track of this as well. Fist bumps over the course of the ACC season. They are tied right now. All right, it's a great day for college football, no doubt about it. Great day for the ACC, for Kelly, Riley, Dorsey, and me. Thanks for watching ACC Kickoff Live here on the ACC Digital Network, brought to you by Ruby Tuesday.